Israel's leaders talk tough on Iran, but when it comes to real danger, they seem keen to keep their own children far from the front lines. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's Minister Bezalel Smotrich admitted he would tell his own daughter not to enlist in the IDF. The same minister who advocates a tough security stance now cites religious and gender-related reasons for his daughter's enlistment. Smotrich's stance adds fuel to public anger, already stoked by images of Netanyahu's son relaxing in the US. The question grows louder: if leaders won't risk their own children, why do they keep sending everyone else's into war after war? As tensions rise across the Middle East and fears of a wider U.S.-Iran confrontation grow, an incendiary remark from a senior Israeli minister about army service has ignited a fresh political and public storm at home. Israel's far-right finance minister Bezalel Smotrich has once again shocked many with a stark new statement that cuts to the heart of Israel's military and social consensus. Pressed by reporters, Smotrich declared that if his own daughter asked about enlisting, he would actively educate her not to join the Israel Defense Forces, citing long-standing religious rulings against women's army service and denouncing mixed-gender combat units. Israeli Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich said, and I quote, "If my daughter asked me, I would try to educate her not to go. The chief rabbinate is against this. This is the position of my rabbis. I hope that you, these big progressives, can also respect the values of several thousand years. And I of course respect those who think differently than I do." Smotrich's remarks land at a moment when the Israel Defense Forces are openly warning of a serious manpower crunch after more than 2 exhausting years of war, even as commanders brace for the possibility of wider regional escalation and new fronts opening up. Within Israel's national religious community, opinions on women in uniform remain deeply divided, with some families proudly encouraging daughters to serve while others see army life as clashing with their religious way of life, as highlighted in the Times of Israel report. Because of these tensions, many religious young women choose civilian national service in schools, hospitals, or welfare institutions rather than enlist in the army, using an accepted alternative track that lets them contribute to society without entering a military framework they or their rabbis view as problematic. Leading religious Zionist rabbis frequently argue that army service for women is neither modest nor appropriate, warning that mixed gender bases, close living conditions and combat roles violate traditional codes of separation and could spiritually or socially harm both the women and the male soldiers around them. Smotrich's own military background is relatively limited, consisting of roughly 14 months of non-combat service in the General Staff's Operations Division after he was finally conscripted at the unusually late age of 28, a record that critics now cite when he lectures others on service. Adding to the controversy around who serves and who does not, Netanyahu's son Uriah has faced angry public criticism for remaining in the United States, reportedly in Miami, while his country fights in Gaza and hundreds of thousands of other Israelis rush home to join the war effort. When the Gaza war erupted after the October 7th attacks, around 3.64 lakh reservists and volunteers were called up or volunteered, and many Israelis living or working abroad dropped everything to fly back, don uniforms again and reinforce frontline units across the country. All of this has reignited Israel's long-running debate over who bears the burden of defense: women, the ultra-Orthodox, political elites, and their families, at the very moment when fears of a larger confrontation involving the United States and Iran are rising. A second round of indirect US-Iran nuclear negotiations was held on February 17 in Geneva, hosted at Oman's embassy, as both sides test whether diplomacy can still contain their spiraling confrontation. Senior US officials have privately indicated that the goal of these talks is to lock in at least a limited nuclear understanding before the broader regional crisis and military posturing push Washington and Tehran past the point where negotiations are politically or strategically viable. The American delegation once more features presidential advisors Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff, whose presence signals that President Donald Trump wants trusted political confidants at the table alongside traditional diplomats for what the White House views as a high-stakes, leader-level file. As in previous rounds, envoys from Oman are serving as the key intermediaries, shuttling between the two delegations in Geneva and using their long-standing ties with both Washington and Tehran to keep communication channels open. Behind the scenes, reports say Witkoff has already used Omani channels to pass carefully worded US messages to Iranian officials, testing formulas on sanctions relief, enrichment caps, and regional de-escalation before they are formally put on the negotiating table. According to regional reporting, Oman's foreign minister compiled a written document reflecting US positions and ideas, then handed it personally to senior Iranian security official Ali Larijani during his recent visit, turning quiet conversations into a more structured set of proposals. Larijani has since acknowledged receiving such a paper, a rare on-record confirmation that organized back-channel diplomacy is operating alongside the headline talks and that Tehran is at least formally studying what Washington and its Arab partners are putting forward. Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Ismail Baghai has stressed that Tehran arrived in Geneva with a full, empowered negotiating team and real ideas for what it calls a fair deal, while insisting that Iran's core demands on sanctions relief and the right to peaceful enrichment remain non-negotiable. The purpose of this trip is to conduct the second round of nuclear negotiations between Iran and the US, which are to be held indirectly through Oman's mediation. Today, the Minister Abbas Araghchi will also have several other meetings, including with the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Oman, which will be this afternoon. It is currently around 9:30 a.m. Swiss time. A meeting is currently underway between the Minister and the Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency Rafael Grossi. The Director General arrived in Geneva this morning from Vienna. Naturally, technical negotiations are taking place, covering economic, political, and legal aspects, as well as technical issues related to nuclear matters. The previous round, naturally after several months of pause in the negotiations following the events that took place in June, was focused on general issues. As the minister also pointed in that session, we were focused on assessing the other side's seriousness. In this round, we came with a full team. Both experts and technical personnel in the nuclear field are present, as well as legal specialists and economic experts. Therefore, our team is complete, which itself reflects the seriousness of the Islamic Republic of Iran. The issue of sanctions relief is for us an inseparable part of any diplomatic process, and our friends in the economic sphere are following this up. On the technical side, as I mentioned, our technical experts are present. Washington has surged aircraft carriers, warships, fighter squadrons, air defense systems, and thousands of additional troops into the Middle East, creating what Trump has described as an armada to both pressure Tehran at the table and give him broad options for strikes if talks collapse. Even as he warns of very steep consequences and hints at the use of force, Trump has mocked Iranian officials as tough or bad negotiators while insisting that Iran looks like it wants to make a deal very badly.
So I'll be involved in those talks indirectly, and they'll be very important. We'll see what can happen. It's been typically, Iran's a very tough negotiator. They're good negotiators, or bad negotiators. I would say they're bad negotiators, because we could have had a deal instead of sending the B-2s in to knock out their nuclear potential, and we had to send the B-2s. I hope they're going to be more reasonable. They want to make a deal. I've been told that a deal is next to impossible. No, I think they want to make a deal. I don't think they want the consequences of not making a deal. They want to make a deal.